During the process, the excavating was not done properly. There was an agreement between us and our neighbors who have a low grade that Mark Scott, the owner of M&B Reality Landscaping, was going to excavate our yard and Dean and Michelle's yard so that there would be a V in the middle and both yards would drain properly. On the very first day they did a little bit of excavating work, but then they installed the sprinklers and a drainage system right away and had to come back later, dig that up because they needed more excavating. And just standing here at the sidewalk, you can see that the yard still tilts and goes down towards the house on the right, which is owned by Dean and Michelle. So that work was not done properly. We had them put patio steps, or these flagstone steps, and they started out nice and big, but as you go through the process, they get smaller and smaller, and the stride is really a little difficult, which is not a major issue, but I had asked them to replace these with larger ones numerous times, and that was ignored. When you look at the sprinkler controller box and this trim or edging, it goes high in places, it goes low in places, just no attention to detail or craftsmanship in this job at all. Again, you can see the rock that we were given, because apparently there is no river rock available, and we were originally told that we would have 4 different color choices. When it came down to it, it was obvious that they didn't order this until it was a last thought, even though we had paid $13,000 at the beginning of the contract. And there's a lot of low-lying places here where there's not enough rock, and that needs to be filled in. We never received the additional rock. Here, coming up to the retaining wall, heading towards the backyard, just really an ugly job here. Nothing raised up high enough to go to the siding of the house, and not even enough to cover the paint-on water barrier, and not enough rock. Even, it's hard to see on the camera, but there's spots where even here it's the plastic paper or the weed barrier is right below and barely covered up with the rock. So these are the flagstone stepping stones with our first retaining wall, and it looks like they're in good shape. However, they were just placed without being supported. So this first step is okay, but then you step to the second one, and there's a lot of movement. And let's see if I can get it to... So that one's moving, this one's moving. Very little support underneath. And in fact, this one here, you can see, is already starting to crack. And there wasn't any support under it. I told them to figure out how to support it. So they put sharp shards of busted up flagstone underneath there. That looks like a $25,000 landscaping job. Really poor. So the sprinklers, we have drainage problems. I haven't run the sprinklers for over 24 hours because this becomes a swimming pool. And it will, if I step in there, it'll just bury all the way through. So that wasn't done correctly. So this gets too much water. And then if you come over here, you can see that this is getting no water. So the sod is already dying. It's only been in place for a little over a week. So not good. The excavation process to get drainage going away from the house. We've had other landscapers look at this since the original issue, and what we're finding is that this should have been raised up higher to drain away from the house. And even if you get down to a position back here. The video might not show it properly, but you can see how to the right it raises up, and it's actually coming back towards the house. So the excavation was not done properly. So this is one of the main concerns here. We have steps that go up to the second story deck. Comes down and it's sitting on what was estimated as about an 800-pound sandstone slab. And if you look underneath, it's sitting on dirt, about 5-6 inches of dirt that's already eroding here in the middle. You can see that. And through the erosion process, this big old slab's going to drop down, and the steps are going to drop down, and then it's going to start pulling the deck away from the house. Also with this sandstone step, so if you can see here, this is the only part that's touching for the right side of the steps coming down onto the sandstone. So just this little piece. So this is supposed to be a support to help temporarily fix it. But it moves. It's not holding any weight. And they shoved this other piece in, so on the right side. So now when you look at the steps, they're actually higher on the right than on the left. Not sure why that was done. Tried to get them to correct this a couple of times before having the sod and everything laid down, so that they could use their nice little skidster there and put one of those larger pieces of sandstone in, because Mark Scott, the owner of the company, said in the design process that we would go from the main steps to this first step to a second step and then onto the sandstone patio. Obviously that was never done, and pretty much that's negligence at this point, in my opinion, because of the damage it's going to do to the deck through time. The sandstone patio, as you look at it aesthetically, it looks okay, and then as you get closer to it and you walk on it, you realize that when they just put a layer of sand on top of dirt, I think about 4, maybe 6 inches low, the sand was never compacted. They really didn't have an understanding of how to level it to make sure drainage was going away. So this point over here is actually higher than over here. So it's all going to flow back towards the house into this part that's kind of a swimming pool for drainage, and just kind of sit and accumulate there. So it actually, the water has to get higher than the patio to spill over and get away from the house. As I walk on these stones, some of them are already eroding below and are loose. Some of them are raising up. So if you can see, this one here is actually starting to rise up, and the others are low, and as you step on them they move and that sort of a thing. It just wasn't installed properly with the compacting, with just a mixture. So here we've got mainly sand. So you got just this sand here, it's loose, and then you got some pebble rocks that are mixed in every once in a while, but it's not evenly distributed. It's not really installed properly or professionally, in my opinion. Again, here are the steps that have an odd stride and are pretty small, but again, that's not the major issue here. These are the big steps. I think these were actually done correctly, and they've got a lot of weight, so they're going to sit steady. And this goes down to the waterfront. We are supposed to have lighting in this area here, and lighting was an afterthought, even though my wife and I both explained that lighting was important to us and it needs to be incorporated into the design. And Mark explained he's not an electrician, he couldn't run the 110, but we do have an electrician who can do that, and we needed the conduit laid. That was an afterthought. They ended up having to dig up the sod after it was laid to repair that, and throughout this process they actually had to dig up a bunch of areas numerous times just to repair simple things. So we finally got it to where there's conduit sticking out for a flagpole spotlight and for a power station down here, and this goes at a 90 and then goes at another 90 to go straight back to where that yellow wire is hanging out on the side of the house, and that is where the conduit should be running. And the conduit that was used underneath the ground is actually plumbing conduit, so it has sharp 90-degree turns, as opposed to electrical conduit, which has a slow turn, a nice curve to it, so that you can run your wiring. Maybe this is the first time they've ever dealt with lighting. That's not what they said after 40 years of experience, but perhaps that's what this is revealing. I was insistent that for proper drainage, that each one of the downspouts, including our neighbor's downspout, should be in this black tubing, and it should terminate down here by the curb at the water. So we have it there. I'm not sure of the grading or level in which this piping goes, but right now there's standing water inside there, which I'm no engineer or expert, but that would tell me that as water backs up into these pipes through ground freeze in North Dakota, then we're going to end up with a problem where the overpressurization of the water inside could expand that pipe and have issues, and we'll have standing water as it thaws in the spring back at each downspout, which is buried. So it's not something we would know until we got water seeping into the foundation. And again, Mark was insistent on having these because that was how you did proper drainage. Maybe in Colorado, but from other reputable landscape experts here in North Dakota, they're saying that that is incorrect. And as you can see, standing down here, the drainage goes from our house down to Dean and Michelle's, so that was never completed the way it was supposed to be. There's a hump right in this area, so drainage, the water actually has to get higher than that to come down. You might be able to see from the video that there's kind of a bathtub effect there, so all the water's gonna collect on the patio back by the stairs, which of course will erode that 800-pound flagstone step quicker, and then just kind of sit back there where the electrical conduit and all that would be, right back over there. It raises up over on the berm side, and then comes back. There's another hill right here, and that's going to make it a challenge for water to drain away too. So drainage, although he talked as if he was the expert and he knew what he was doing, just the naked eye can see that it wasn't done properly. And that was an emphasis that we had, my wife and I, in having them do this job. So the berm here in the middle, the separation piece, was supposed to have rock and things on it. And because the rock was so ugly that they got us, we told them not to put it in. No substitute was offered. And now, because of the way the sprinklers are set up, it's eroding on our side. It's fine on the other side, but there's no sprinklers over there. And in fact, the way they put in the drip lines, and these are folks that claim to be owners of a tree farm, and the problem is they wrapped the drip line around and around and around each of the trunks. So when these trees grow up, they're going to be strangled by their own drip system. And you can see that the sod is coming apart here. I'm standing, it's extremely mushy, even though I haven't watered for a day, because this thing is just soup out here. And they even put in front of this rock They even put a sprinkler up there. I'm not sure why they put a full sprinkler up there and then added these drip line sprinklers inside the berm. I would think that that sprinkler head should be down here on the lawn. But it's apparent to me throughout this whole process that there was very little planning or logistical concern or even ordering of supplies in advance to be able to do the job in a proper order, or to make it done right. So there you have it. That's how our yard turned out. And again, from the surface, aesthetically, it looks very nice. But as I told the owner after 3 days of trying to get a hold of him, and then he finally answered me. As I told him, you can spray paint dirt and make it look good. It doesn't mean that it's done correctly. So we have a lot of issues, and we did call up another local, reputable landscaping company. Originally, we went with M&B Reality Landscaping because they were recommended to us by the builder of the home. We didn't know these folks. They're out of Colorado Springs. That should have been our first concern, but we went with them. They sounded like they knew what they were talking about. But the other locally owned and operated landscaping company that is reputable and has been here for a number of years, they came in and did an estimate, and out of the $24,000 that should have gone into this yard, we paid $17,000 of it, so that's gone. And I won't let M&B Reality Landscaping back on my land because they're just going to jack things up, and I really don't have time to supervise their people. Their crew spent more time checking their phone, taking breaks, and looking at the bikinis than they did doing the work, which probably is why they had to re-dig up a lot of work and redo it. But nonetheless, this other company came in, looked at everything, and they've given us an estimate of $27,000 because all of this needs to be ripped out. They really can't salvage very much, maybe some of the flagstone to do another patio. But the sprinklers, controller, all this other stuff needs to come out of here. And for the simple reason of the grading wasn't done correctly. They need to come in here and excavate, and you can't excavate on top of sod and the rest of the landscaping. So we're out 17 grand. We need another 27 to get it done right, and there we sit. So I filed a complaint with the North Dakota Attorney General's office, and I'm hoping that at least gets North Dakota to tag these guys as incompetent, maybe take their license away and kick them out of North Dakota. I don't want any other North Dakotans having to hire these people and go through the same horrible experience that we did. So that's that.